Welcome back. It is Friday, and you know what that means, Friday Transformation. And today, it's a little different because for the month of April, I am providing a bunch of messengers to come and bless the men who listen to these podcasts and segments. We're going to have a bunch of different conversations for the month of April. And the reason why I wanted to do this was to inspire our men to continue to bring messengers to provide some great tangible resources for our men. But also, as we end with the month of April, we'll be going into the month of May for Mental Health Awareness Month. My apologies. And I'm really going to celebrate that one and bring a lot of tangible resources to the table. So today, with the Friday Transformation Show that we're providing, this show is called The Executive Presence, How to Share and Hold It. And I have an amazing guest. This guest is a trainer for the Certified Life Coaching Institute. He is also the founder and owner, CEO of Tailor Made Coaching Group. And he is also the trainer who trained me to become a life coach. So I have a lot of admiration and respect for this man. So I want to bring Troy into the room, Coach Troy Taylor. And Troy, you know the topic, right? Our topic today is executive presence, how we keep it, own it, share it. And I know that you are an amazing professional coach in your own right. So it was really important for me to just bring you to the room and join in on this conversation, be my first professional career coach on our platform to give us the gems, to share with our young people, our older folks, whoever else in between who needs this wisdom, the executive presence, how we keep it, own it, share it, and so forth. What you got for us?
Yeah, thank you for having me today, Adam. It's a pleasure to be here. And so again, you listeners that don't know me, I'm Troy Taylor, CEO and founder of Tailor Made Coaching Group, a boutique consulting firm offering services of coaching, assessments, facilitation, and training. And today I want to briefly discuss executive presence, right? Sometimes we hear that word, sometimes we don't, depending on what spaces we're in. And so when you think of it, the term executive presence, depending on who you're speaking to, it can have different meanings. So I'm going to frame it in a way, hopefully, that whether you're just starting your journey in your profession and you want to figure out, like, how do I get promoted? How do I become a manager, a director, a VP up? Like, how do I continue to move up? Like, how do people have to experience me? Or you already have one of those roles and you want to go to that next rung of the ladder, so to speak. And so firstly, I would start with executive presence. It's really that thing about how do people experience you, right? How are they experiencing the way you communicate, what you bring into the room? Some people will say attitude, but I also use the word energy. So it's your attitude, it's your energy, it's the way people receive your communication. It's your awareness to things and how you respond to others, and again, how they respond to that. And so it captures a lot of different elements, a lot of different things. And so people may sometimes ask, well, how do you develop it, right? And you may hear different things, but what you often don't hear is, like, how do I do that, or where do I begin, right? And so for those that want to develop that executive presence, to be seen or perceived as a person that's professional, ready to go to the next level, one thing I would encourage you to start getting some self-awareness, right? Being really aware of how people perceive or experience you right now. In order to do that, in order to become self-aware, first you have to self-assess, right? And so there's different assessment tools that you can purchase out there and have others take it, like some forms of 360, or you can even keep it simpler than that. Asking people personally, but more importantly, professionally, like, how do they experience you in a work environment? Like, tell me about, if you was to think of me and someone said, would you refer me? Why would you, or why would you not? Also, it requires you to be in a space of being able to take feedback, right? And so in other words, if someone says, well, Troy, you kind of do X, Y, Z, and I immediately jump in. Well, let me explain, right? So that may send a signal to someone that you're not in the space of really being open because you're trying to explain. When you ask someone essentially for feedback, what we're really asking them is, how do you observe me? Right? It's not, they're not challenging your motives or, the why behind it, but how do they currently observe you? Right. And so just taking that information in. So I would say start with that. And after you start with that, come up with a plan to start figuring out, okay, what are those things that I have to start working on? Also, right, what is the goal? What kind of role are you going for? Like, how do you want people to perceive you? Do you want them to perceive you as being a person that clearly communicates or that connects with others, right? And so there's several ways that you can approach it, right? Obviously, with books, there's things that you can listen to. There's coach. You can may work with a coach as well too. I would also encourage to get a mentor because essentially, think of it like this: you're entering your journey in the workforce, right? Or you're already there. If you're just starting, let's say that's your version of 1.0. Okay. You're trying to go from 1.0 to 2.0, right? That next level. And there's often skills and abilities and competencies that you need to learn and develop. And it probably will require things that's outside of your awareness. So also throwing a mentor into that mix as well. But you may also be a person that's in 2.0, right? 2.0, I'll describe that as maybe being a manager. And you've been managing for a while and you want to go to a director level and you've applied for it, but there's something you haven't got that opportunity and you're wondering why you haven't, right? And sometimes people might say, oh yeah, you're just doing great, but we don't know. And so we're just doing great. And then there's, oh no, the way I experienced Tom, he's already at that next level. We need to promote him, right? And so really getting a clear idea, what exactly are they looking for to go to the next level? And then it is that 3.0. That 3.0, you are maybe in a senior leadership position, but your team is not running on full cylinder. There's conflict. You find your team or staff or department or organization kind of experiencing the same issues, or like, why do we keep running into this problem, right? And so there's a way that maybe you're communicating, the way people are experiencing you as a leader, whether intentionally or unintentionally, that you're not aware, right? And often we work with senior leaders, right, around executive presence, because in their space, it's not really about doing the work, but more the strategic vision and leading. And so we often work with them in that space and take them through a process to work on that. Because when you're leading others, right, they have to not only believe in the vision, but they also have to believe in you, right, which goes back to having that executive presence. So it really also becomes a little nuanced when you talk about if you're a person of color as well, right? Because you're navigating a space that you're like, okay, how am I being perceived sometime? And also, I still also want to bring my authentic self, which we always encourage. And yet, when we work with individuals in these spaces, helping them to kind of capture what is my special ability, right? What's my X factor, right? And how do I allow that to show up in spaces where I may be one of one, right? I may be the only person at that table that looks like me, which is fine, right? But and how do I still navigate that space? And so executive presence can range a lot of different things, but that's what I would first start to say. Start thinking about from that aspect, and it's something that you continue to work on, because it's either, think about it like this: think about executive presence professionally as your professional brand. We all have a professional brand, so you have a brand, and so the choice is, are you actively working on it, right? And so that's developing that executive presence.
So Troy, you cooking, you dropped a lot of gems, and I'm taking them all in. And that first one you said about the energy.
Mm-hmm.
I had a great mentor who used to teach me about the power of presence. And that was all about energy. And he would talk about, like, when your power of presence is on point, your energy's on point. People feel it when you walk in the room before you even walk in the room, kind of deal. and that energy being so important. So love that thought, because I feel sometimes we forget about energy. And I think it's such a valid point, because we're just moving energies, a bunch of us humans just moving around with energy. But then you said something about like and this is, I think a lot of folks get stuck in. I used to, until I changed my mindset on it. But when you're being evaluated, right? Like when you're going through an evaluation and you are that one of one, so you might be even more like, the feelings might even been heightened more by being that one of one. And you use the word, excuse me, being how they observe you. That was so good, because like I've never thought of it in that way. I always thought of it like, feedback is just perception. That's the way I used to convince myself to just let it go. It's just perception. That's one person's perception. But I love the way you said it, because I think it actually speaks to its truest form of what it is. It's just their observation of you, how they observe you and the way you do it. Then just moving forward on the other gem you mentioned, just, the way this executive attitude, how it personifies, right? And how you hold it and how you bring it into different spaces. And I think sometimes, you have people in the work world, and you know them, Troy, who are on the come up, and they show it. They show they're on the come up. They're aggressive with it, right? They're hungry, maybe a little too hungry. They ain't leaving nothing on the plate for nobody else, right? Because they're so damn hungry. And then you have the opposite end of that, where they just don't know where to start, right? With that energy. They have all this amazing energy contained in them, but they're not tapping into it in the right way, right? They might not have the mentor you spoke about. I totally agree with you on the mentor or a coach who can bring those things out of them. Then there's that person in between, right? Who's just not too extreme. They're not too low with it. They're right in the middle, but maybe not feeling like they're getting those results as the hungrier person, right? Because we all at times compare ourselves to who's above us. Same with the people below us. They might have this contrasting comparing. So I guess it's saying that in the category of those three individuals, the one who's on the come up, the one in the middle, and the one who's just lost with it, but has all of the gifts and talents. I guess how do you decipher those three folks? What is the advice for those three folks as they navigate those spaces when they're trying to like get to that upper level, that executive level we're speaking to?
Yeah, so I'll start with the first, the people that are a great question. The people that are on the come up, and they show it. It reminds me of a high potential executive that we were working with. Was on the come up, and yet got some feedback about sometimes the way people experience him, right? And so he was already liked by senior leadership. He was already on a fast track, because he was identified as high potential, but yet he received some of this feedback. And so part of our coaching was around executive presence, because you can be on the come up, you can have that ability, and yet what potentially happens when you isolate other people from yourself, right? Or you get perceived as a person that people experience you prickly, right? Or off-putting at times, right? And so again, may not be your intention, right? But those may be the same stakeholders that you may need to help push the ball across the court, right? Giving a business initiative, right? And so the benefit from and these were his words, were really understanding, being more aware of that and how that came across. Another standpoint, you said the person that's in the middle, and so that a person that's in the middle, they have the ability to do it just like the first person, right? The first example, but in different times of work, we work with people that was individual contributors about to go to management or thought about it. A lot of times it really became they had some frustration in different parts of their work brand, right, or who they are, or how they was experienced. But a lot of times it comes down to a decision. We're often frustrated because we haven't made a decision. So they haven't made that decision to work on those things that they knew, because often the things that we know we should work on, those are a lot of times the things that get in the way. And so, in working with a couple of working with this manufacturing company with some individuals that they was wondering, could they put them on that list, and they were able to kind of within themselves make that decision what they needed to do. And then that the last one, like you listed as don't really know what to do. And what I would say is, we're living in an interesting time nowadays, but we're also living in a wonderful time as it relates to information, right? So here, with TaylorMade Coaching Group, we also use AI in our service that we provide as well. And what I would suggest to anyone is, if you're trying to figure out like what is my next step or what is some things that I could begin working on, right? There's no shortage of the ability to do research. There's no shortage of information to start going down that pathway, right? In terms of, okay, these are the, there's someone over there that's doing that. I want to do that. What are the top five things that I can potentially start working on? Of course, getting that feedback, that assessment, the people around you, and start going there, or asking yourself, is that what I really want to do? Because a lot of times it's not really the information, right? It's something that may be blocking that person, and it could be confidence. You'd be surprised working with leaders who are already there, that confidence is affecting them in their work, but it's coming from a different space. And when they identified and was able to work on that, it allowed them to build more capacity. And the interesting thing about confidence, Adam, confidence is not a wide brush. You can have supreme confidence in one thing and lack confidence in others, right? And so the question is starting to identify what that is, what's behind or under that, right? That's potentially getting in the way.
Yeah. No, love that, Troy. I think, you really broke down those three and gave some great guidance, because I think at one point of my careers, as I was going through my career, the spectrum of my career, I think I fell in all three of those categories, right? I was once the one who had all the gifts, but just did not know what to do with it, right? Couldn't see out of it. And I didn't have someone giving me those 5 steps, telling me, hey, take these 5 steps, right? And then I was the one in the middle where I was looking upward. And, I come from the residential camping world. So that is predominantly dominated, by white folks. And I think as I was in that space and I was doing bigger things than my counterparts, I found myself in that middle space, always looking upward, seeing folks get accolades and maybe felt like I deserved them, right? But what I wasn't doing was tapping into my real gift. I think I was maybe, as much as I felt I was confident, I wasn't fully confident in that middle space, right? And then I think I've always been a go-getter, kind of like, I don't think I've been the type on the come up. It depended on opportunity, right? I think it was more of the go-getter in me, the fiery side of me, like, yeah, I'm gonna get that, or more to like prove to myself that I can get that, right? It was more of that. But I have great friends, colleagues, people that I know, mentees even, who have that come up spirit. And I think you're right. I think sometimes in that come up spirit, which benefits you in so many ways, you'll see what you said. There's that pocket of confidence over here, and you see it in the way they speak, and they're so sure of themselves, right? And you admire that. You're like, damn, he's so sure of himself today. And then there's the other side of it where maybe we're doing a task that isn't their strength, and their voice kind of diminishes a little. It goes from 100,000% down to 50. It really drops because it's that pocket of confidence in that work or whatever it may be that allows them to connect to that work the same way they connect to that come up language or energy. I wanted to go back to the energy piece, Troy, because that, as I mentioned about the power of presence, and I know that's something I share with a lot of young people in my life who I mentor, the power of presence and how important it is, not just on the positive pieces, right? Just like how I mentioned, my mentor says, when you have your power of presence and it's aligned, before you walk in the room, people recognize it. When you walk in the room, people want to look, right? There's this power presence you bring. And then I think there's the other power presence where you're so powerful, but it delivers, it lands wrong for people, right? That, or you might say it's threat, like, people are saying I'm threatening them with my power of presence, right? Those two folks, just to recap, our energy piece, the one that one on that side of like, fully embracing it and doing it in a positive life. And then the other side, maybe like the other three we mentioned, the person who was on the bottom of those three who didn't know what to do. I think sometimes people have that energy and that energy you're speaking of and that power presence, but maybe don't know how to deliver it in the right way, or you know what I'm saying, make it land in the right way where people can digest it. It maybe comes off too
Mm-hmm.
powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, it just goes back to that awareness and getting feedback from others. Like, when I'm in, asking them, hey, when I'm in different environments, like, how do I come across? Right. And also being aware when you are in different environments, what is the tone? What is the vibe? What is the business culture environment that I'm in and the way that people are interacting, right? Right. Because we still can be ourselves, you still be aware of the environment, right? So for instance, when you go to the library, you don't change who you are, but you're aware that there's an etiquette there, right? So just being aware, right? What is the etiquette in the space that I am? Still bringing myself, but at what point am I bringing it here, here, or here?
No, you're so right. I like that. I like the library analogy because it's kind of like there's the environment you prepare yourself for, and then there's the etiquette pieces of that environment, right? Some environments might be a little more hostile, and but some need that silence, some needs a different approach, and engaging that I think is so important. It makes me think, just we're at the end of our segment here, and at the each of end of our segment, we always give a one, two tangible resources on our topic we're speaking on, and this executive presence. And before we get to that tangible resource, I just wanted to, gauge you, and I know that you are successful in your own right in the things that you do. You help other successful people. You support them in getting better at what they do and the things that they need to do to elevate where they want to be. I guess what was one role you had in your career, Troy, that you had to like discover those energies, the things that we're talking about. If you can give us just a little snippet of what that felt like for you.
What it felt like for me to find out, or when I found out, or how say that again?
I'd say both. I was thinking more of like when you first found out, when you were starting to tap into that, right? Because
Oh,
we're
okay.
giving
Yeah.
guidance to our people and our listeners. And I'm a strong believer of like, bringing messengers who went through it and got past it, right? And I believe you're one of those. So kind of like how did you acknowledge it and then like overcome it, I guess, to identify this power?
Yeah, so one for whatever reason, I was pretty much always curious, right? Always curious to learn, and because I was curious to learn, I wanted to know like what was working, what was not, and I think even working with a lot of clients that we working with, even when we do executive forums, giving insights, what's working or what's not, can be very powerful. And so, and spaces in my journey when I've seen things that didn't work, or when I didn't get the result I wanted, I was always curious. And someone said, okay, you didn't get that role, or this didn't happen because whatever they said to me. Right. And so then I leaned into the curiosity piece to start to learn, like, oh, okay. Oh, it's different. Okay. So I have to. And what I want to be clear to understand for everyone, the realization of things will come, right? It'll either be told to you directly or indirectly. You'll feel like it's something different here. What we always encourage people is to be curious, to be curious. And then the personal journey is, okay, how do I bridge that gap, right? How do I bridge that gap? And because you can get assistance, right, all the ways that we mentioned, and it still can be personal for you, right? You customize it for yourself, right? You still can be yourself, just like, what do I need to do to close that gap? But I think one thing that can benefit you is being curious, because someone can say, I've worked with a senior leader and just was, she said she got this feedback from people, but basically she was saying that, they didn't know what they was talking about, right? And this is a known Fortune 100 company you and your listeners would know. And yet, if everyone didn't know what they was talking about, so what does that mean, right? And so again, are we in a space of being aware that other people have a different way that they perceive us that may be different in the way that I believe I'm showing up? And if more than one person is saying that, right, or groups of people saying that, then do I have the courage to say to myself, okay, there is a gap. Let me be curious.
No, that curiosity, almost the curiosity and the courage is almost two C's there that come together. And I appreciate you answering that one, Troy, because it's like you can always you're going to be curious, and if you don't get a promotion or you're expecting something, right? Deep in your heart, you're like, it's me all day, and you don't get it, and it burns you up. Like you know it bothers you, but it doesn't bother you to the degree where you want to be curious enough to question, to ask, to educate yourself, to understand why, right? Because I think that's another thing, Troy, is like the more we can understand the whys of things, right, the more we can move on, right? Because if we don't understand the whys, we almost stay in the middle of that little purgatory of like not moving on and forward.
Yeah.
And then there's the level of like what you said about curiosity. And I think there's a level of strength with that curiosity because, right, there's like, you want to be curious and say, hey, what did I do? But then you have to prepare yourself of what they're going to say, especially if you're a little oblivious of yourself. All right.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes as we elevate, and I'll speak for myself, excuse me, sometimes as I elevated, not on purpose, maybe got oblivious to certain things, right? I was more receptive to other things because my level of position brought me to different conversations and almost disconnected me from some of the basement conversations, right? So I love the curiosity. I totally agree. And then the courage of accepting what people are going to say. Have that courage to say, okay, that's what it is. And the courage to move forward from it is even more important because I think as you get that feedback, and I've been on both sides of it. I've given a lot of feedback to folks, and I've received a lot. And as I shared earlier, I always used to chalk it up to perception so that I didn't take it personal, right? It was just perception, right? How they're perceiving it. But I think, like you said, it's how someone observes you and it's their observation of you, right? So it's what they feel. I just want to keep asking you more questions, but I know we're at the end of our segment, Troy. I appreciate you, sir. One, two tangible resources, right, for our listeners on this topic. If there was some walk away that you could give them a 1-2 thought, I usually call it a 1-2 punch in spirit of Muhammad Ali. What would be that 1-2 punch from Troy to the listeners on this topic of executive presence?
Yeah, a 1-2 punch. I would say the first step I would say is to get what we call in the coaching world, assessment world, 360, right? Get feedback from people that you're around, professionally and personally, right? And you can pay for different tools to do that, or you can just ask, right? I would say get real-time feedback from people, and be as transparent, taking that information, right? And then identify what are some of those things you want to work on. So it can be, hey, I'm trying to work. You can in general ask them and kind of digest it from there and decide what you want to work on. Or you can say, hey, I want to work on my ability to communicate. I want to work on um, being more confident, or I want to work on my ability to manage conflict, whatever it is. And then you can ask him, based on how you experience with me, can you describe, right? And then come back to them 3 or 6 months later and ask them that same question, those same questions.
Yeah, that's so solid. I appreciate that 1, 2 tangible resources. And you know what it is? It is Friday. So this conversation is all about transforming you before you kick it on your weekend and get your self-care moments. Myself and Troy wanted to bring these thoughts to you, give you some gems to think about, right? So if you're getting your self-care moments in this weekend and you're thinking about your energy ain't right, I just did a segment about PMA, positive mental attitude, and the opposite of that, DDA, which is a doo-doo attitude. If you're finding yourself in that DDA space, it might be your energy. You probably need to check in with that energy. And if that cup is empty, you probably need to fill it up over the weekend. So it's Friday today. You got to Sunday to get these self-care moments in and fill that cup up. But other than that, I want to give a big ups to Troy for coming in. I'm going to give him that camp clap as I give all of my people who come through. Got to get Troy back on this platform, because I know Troy has a lot of gems for our people around career, leadership, development. I will also be providing links of all his services in the description box. Feel free to reach out to Troy if you need his services, or if you just want to connect with him. He is a coach, as we mentioned, so his services is available. But you know, other than that, other than all this information we gave you today, you know what my last words are. Who's helping you heal? Peace.